6 to 8 years of sacrifice. And my own granddaughter said, "You're not family."
They handed me a suitcase of rejection, but I kept the receipts.
My grandson didn't mean for me to see it. He thought he was sending a private text to his buddies, laughing behind my back as I stood at the podium. But the message flashed across the big screen behind me. A technical glitch. Someone's phone synced to the projector. Can't wait till this old man croaks so I get the house. The room went still. I felt the words hit me harder than any layoff notice, any medical bill, any punch life had ever thrown. 42 years of work, and this was what my grandson thought of me. Before we continue, please subscribe, like, and tell me what time it is where you are now. My name's Harold James Whitman. I'm 65, and until last Friday, I was a machinist at the Allison transmission plant in Indianapolis. My whole life has been built around work. The smell of cutting oil on my clothes, the rattle of the assembly line, the clatter of metal against metal. The retirement party was supposed to be a celebration. My co-workers had decorated the Union Hall with banners and balloons. There was brisket smoking outside, sweet tea sweating in plastic pitchers, laughter echoing off the concrete walls. I'd just finished my thank you speech. Nothing fancy, just gratitude for the people who stood by me for decades. When the screen behind me blinked, my daughter Marlene had been running a slideshow of old photos. Me in grease-stained overalls, holding newborn grandkids, Christmas mornings in the modest ranch house on Brookside Avenue. Suddenly, the slideshow vanished, and a single message popped up. Big white letters on a blue bubble. Can't wait till this old man croaks so I get the house. Dylan's name at the top, my grandson. 24, all swagger and Instagram filters. At first, people thought it was a joke, a few nervous laughs. Then the silence deepened, heavy and ugly. Someone coughed. Someone else whispered. I felt heat climb my neck. I stared at the message while my heart thudded against my ribs. Grandpa, that's not... Dylan stammered from the back, his phone clutched in his hand. He looked pale under the fluorescent lights. It was meant for... It's a joke, man. No one laughed. I managed a smile that felt carved from stone. Technology, I said quietly. My voice cracked just enough for anyone listening closely to hear. Always full of surprises. The screen went black again. Someone fumbled with cables. The slideshow returned, but the room didn't. The air stayed wrong, brittle. People avoided my eyes. My daughter's face was a storm of shock and shame. Dylan just stood there, frozen, cheeks flaming red. I finished my speech in 2 sentences, thanked everyone, and stepped down. My hands were shaking. The brisket smelled suddenly sharp and greasy. I wanted to leave but couldn't. It was my party. So I sat at the edge of my own retirement celebration and tried to swallow the humiliation with sweet tea. Outside, dusk slid across Indianapolis. The Union Hall parking lot was full of Ford pickups and aging Buicks. I watched taillights blink as a few guests slipped out early, uncomfortable after the scene. My son-in-law tried small talk that died in the air. Dylan stayed glued to his phone, thumbs flying, probably trying to control the damage in his group chat. I thought about everything I'd done for him. The first car, a dented but reliable Honda Civic I'd bought at auction and spent 3 weekends fixing. The college tuition checks I'd co-signed when his scholarships fell short. The times I said yes to just a little help, Grandpa, even when it meant skipping a repair on my own house. Now this. Croak so I get the house. On the drive home that night, my old F-150 rattled along I-70 under orange streetlights. The dash lights glowed a tired green. The smell of machine oil clung to my jacket like a ghost. I didn't cry, I rarely do, but something deeper shifted. Something that had been patient, forgiving, quiet all my life. I'd worked since I was 17, paid off this little house, 1 paycheck at a time. It's nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, brick front, small porch with a swing Sarah and I bought before cancer took her. That house is more than wood and shingles. It's decades of Christmas mornings, scraped knees, and quiet cups of coffee before long shifts. And Dylan thought it was just a prize waiting for him when I croaked. Back home, I hung my work jacket for the last time. The house felt too quiet without Sarah. On the kitchen table sat my retirement folder, pension papers, life insurance, the deed to the house, neatly rubber-banded because I've always kept my affairs in order. I poured a finger of Maker's Mark and sat staring at those papers until midnight. Something hardened in me. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg for respect. I was going to teach it. The next morning I woke early out of habit. No alarm, just decades of shift work etched into my body clock. Sunlight hit the blinds in stripes across the kitchen. I made coffee and opened the drawer where I keep important things: union contacts, HR numbers, my lawyer's card. I started making calls, quietly, methodically. The first was to the pension office. I wanted to review beneficiary options. The woman on the line was cheerful, congratulated me on retirement. I asked questions about transferring benefits to trusts, about survivorship options, took notes in a yellow legal pad, then the county clerk, deed transfer rules, then my credit union, account pay on death designations. Each call felt like tightening a bolt. I didn't know my full plan yet, but I knew this: Dylan wasn't going to coast on my life's work, and he was going to learn in front of everyone that legacy is earned. That night I went through old files, birth certificates, mortgage payoff letter, Sarah's death certificate, insurance policies. The paper smelled faintly of dust and ink. Memories bled through. Sarah laughing as we signed the house papers. Marlene's high school graduation cap tossed in the yard. Dylan as a toddler playing with a toy dump truck on these very floors. I love my family. I still do. But love doesn't mean handing everything to someone who mocks you. At 2 a.m., I stopped, stared at the ceiling, listened to a freight train moan in the distance. Somewhere deep inside, a plan was starting to form. The morning after the party, I walked my quiet street in worn boots, coffee mug in hand. Brookside Avenue was waking slowly, sprinklers ticking across yellow lawns, a neighbor's dog barking at the mailman. I'd spent decades on this street, helping repair roofs after storms, lending tools, watching kids grow. That modest house was my castle. Dylan saw it as a payday. I opened the garage. It smelled of old sawdust and motor oil. Tools lined the walls, wrenches polished smooth by years of use. A drill Sarah gave me one Christmas, still humming when I pressed the trigger. Above the workbench hung a photo of us the day we finished paying off the mortgage. She'd waved the deed in the air, laughing, cheeks flushed with victory. That paper still sat in my desk, yellowed but powerful. I remembered the sacrifices that made that moment. Double shifts when layoffs threatened. Winter mornings starting before dawn, hands so cold they barely turned bolts. Side jobs fixing neighbors' mowers just to cover Marlene's first year of college when the plant cut bonuses. Sarah picking up sewing gigs to stretch grocery money. We'd done it all quietly, proud but never boastful. Dylan had been our joy once. I pictured him at 8, riding the bike I'd found at a garage sale and rebuilt with fresh paint. His grin when I taught him to fish at Eagle Creek Park. His small hands clutching mine at Sarah's funeral. The only warmth I'd felt that day. Somewhere along the way, that boy disappeared, replaced by someone obsessed with quick wealth, image, and likes. After high school, he drifted through community college, then quit. Tried drop shipping, then crypto, then influencer gigs, all smoke. He borrowed often, always promising to pay back when things blew up. They never did. Still, I helped. I co-signed a car loan when he was 19. I paid an eviction notice once because I couldn't stand the thought of him homeless. And this was my thanks. Croak, so I get the house. That Monday I went downtown to the county building. The marble lobby smelled like wax and government paper. I took a number and waited with people filing deeds, divorces, birth certificates. When it was my turn, I asked about living trusts, deed transfers, and inheritance law. The clerk, a kind woman with reading glasses on a chain, handed me pamphlets and answered every question. She didn't know the story behind my interest, and I didn't tell her. Next, my credit union. The young banker perked up when I asked about payable on death options and trusts. Want to set up something for grandkids? He asked brightly. I smiled without humor. Something like that. That week became a quiet mission. Every morning I woke early, drank black coffee, and studied. I filled yellow pads with notes on revocable living trusts, beneficiary designations, power of attorney. I read about how to bypass probate and how to protect assets from reckless heirs. It wasn't revenge yet. It was preparation. Meanwhile, Dylan went on living loudly. Social media showed him posing beside rented cars, flashing cash that probably wasn't his. A friend sent me a screenshot from Instagram. Dylan at a bar bragging, "Old man's finally retiring. House on Brookside is as good as mine." Comments full of laughing emojis and gold digger jokes. Each post tightened something in my chest. I didn't confront him, didn't yell or demand apologies. I've learned shouting doesn't teach respect. It just fuels defiance. Instead, I kept working my quiet plan. One evening, Marlene called. "Dad, about Friday. I'm so sorry. Dylan swears it was a joke. You know how kids are." Her voice was soft, embarrassed. I stared at the photo of Sarah on the fridge. "Kids or not, it hurt," I said simply. "I know. I'll talk to him again." "No need." A pause. "You're not mad?" "I'm learning." I kept my voice calm. "Tell Dylan I love him." I meant it, even then. Loving someone doesn't mean trusting them blindly. That night I found the original mortgage satisfaction letter, brittle at the folds. I slid it into a fresh folder, labeled estate planning. Beneath it went bank statements, pension summaries, insurance policies. The folder grew thick. It felt like armor. At the plant, my old foreman Bill stopped me in the parking lot. "Heard about the party. Kids can be cruel." His eyes were sad. "I'm fine," I said. "Just thinking." Bill gripped my shoulder. "Don't let them take what you worked for." I nodded. By the end of the week, I'd met with a lawyer. Not the expensive downtown type, a steady, middle-aged woman named Karen, who'd handled our will when Sarah got sick. Her office smelled of coffee and legal pads. "Harold," she said kindly, after I explained, "you want to restructure your estate?" "I want control," I replied, "so no one entitled takes what they haven't earned." She asked questions: assets, house value, pension, savings. I answered, sliding over neatly labeled folders. She smiled faintly. "You're more organized than most clients. Sarah taught me that. Keep papers in order so family doesn't drown in chaos when you're gone." Karen suggested a revocable living trust, naming beneficiaries, skipping probate entirely. "You can update it anytime. You decide who gets what, or who doesn't." I felt something ease in me. Power, quiet but solid. We drafted documents. The house, once intended for Marlene and Dylan, would instead fund a scholarship at the local trade school for kids willing to work with their hands. My savings would split between my daughter and a small veterans charity Sarah loved. Dylan would get nothing but a single, undeniable letter. Karen raised an eyebrow. "You sure about excluding him? Some families fight." "I'm sure, and I want it airtight." She nodded. "We'll notarize, record, and file. Certified copies sent. He can't challenge much without spending money he doesn't have." When I left her office that day, a light snow had started. Soft flakes on my worn jacket. I felt oddly calm. For the first time since the party, my chest didn't ache. But I wasn't finished. Because humiliation isn't healed by silence. Sometimes it needs the truth exposed. I began to think about how and when Dylan would learn. Quiet letters or something more public. A mirror held up to his greed, way he'd broadcast his cruelty. Another event was coming soon. A family dinner. Marlene was planning to celebrate my Next chapter. Dylan would be there, smug as ever, expecting to talk about my house and retirement money. That might be the place. I didn't want a screaming match. I wanted quiet, unshakable facts. So I kept gathering screenshots of his public posts bragging about inheriting the house, texts he'd sent asking for loans, till the old man's gone. I printed them, dated, signed. Karen helped notarize what mattered. Facts have weight when stamped and sealed. Each page slid into a leather portfolio I hadn't used since Sarah's funeral. It smelled faintly of her perfume. Preparing it was painful, but necessary. Some nights I questioned myself. Revenge isn't who I am. But then I'd remember the look on Dylan's face when he realized the party had gone silent, the lack of apology, the way he kept mocking online even after. And I'd remember Sarah's quiet voice years ago. Don't let kindness become weakness, Harold. She was right. Spring slid into early summer, warm and heavy in Indianapolis. My days were simple now. Coffee on the porch, long walks past neighbors mowing their lawns, evenings with a paperback and the hum of a box fan. But inside, a quiet storm built. Dylan didn't know about the lawyer, didn't know that the house he mocked me for still paying taxes on was already out of his reach. To him, I was just Grandpa Harold, soft, sentimental, an easy mark. His arrogance grew bolder. One Thursday, Marlene stopped by with groceries. She moved carefully as though I might break. Dad, she said, setting bags on the counter, Dylan's been asking questions. About your will? I looked up from the onions I was chopping. What kind of questions? She hesitated. If the house is still going to him, if you're planning to help him with a business loan. He says he's finally starting something big. I sliced through an onion cleanly. Did he ask me? No, said he didn't want to upset you. Upset me? I almost laughed. What's the business? Some sort of content studio, she said. Influencer house thing. Dad. He thinks he can flip the Brookside place, get investors. The knife paused in my hand. Flip the house? She flushed. I told him it's not his to count on. But you know Dylan. He thinks... I know. My voice stayed level. Thanks for telling me. She touched my arm. Dad, he's young. Maybe dumb. But he loves you. I didn't answer. Love without respect is a hollow thing. 2 weeks later, Dylan came himself. He showed up in a leased Mustang, exhaust loud enough to shake windows. His sunglasses cost more than my first car. He swaggered into my kitchen with a grin. Grandpa, looking good. Retirement life suits you. I gestured to the coffee pot. Want some? Nah, I'm good. He leaned against the counter, scrolling his phone. So, I've been thinking, you're retired now, right? Got all that pension stuff sorted? I rinsed my cup slowly. Why? He flashed a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Well, I'm finally getting serious about business. Partnering with some guys from Chicago. They know marketing, I know, well, content. We just need a house. Cool vibe. Retro but classy. Brookside would be perfect. The audacity stole my breath for a beat. You want me to give you the house? Not give, he said quickly. You know, just sign it over now. Tax stuff's easier while you're alive. And hey, I'd keep it in the family. Plus, you wouldn't have to worry about upkeep. I studied him. The gold chain, the cheap cologne, the restless eyes darting to my bank papers on the counter. He saw me as an ATM with a heartbeat. No, I said quietly. He blinked. What? I'm not signing anything over. His smile cracked. Grandpa, come on. I'm trying to build something. You always said work hard, and I said work hard, not take what isn't yours. The silence stretched. His jaw tightened. Fine, he muttered. Guess I'll just wait. I set my cup down carefully. That's all you have to say? He shrugged and left, tires squealing in the driveway. I stood there, staring at the coffee rings on the counter, rage like cold iron settling deeper. Not yelling had made him think I was weak. Good. Let him think that. That night I added the conversation to my growing file. I wrote a simple note. June 3rd. Dylan asked me to sign over Brookside. I refused. Karen had told me to document interactions. Judges respect paper more than memory. I printed screenshots of his latest Instagram posts. Him bragging, "Old man will cave, just a matter of time." Another, "Soon the Brookside crib is mine." He'd tagged a realtor friend. I slipped each page into the leather portfolio. Facts, cold and patient. Meanwhile, Karen and I finalized the trust. She slid the finished binder across her desk, heavy, sealed with notary stamps. "Everything's official, Harold. He's out. No contest clause means, if he tries, he loses what tiny bit he had." I ran my hand across the leather cover, relief and sadness tangled. "Thank you." "You okay?" she asked. "I will be." The family dinner Marlene planned landed on a warm Saturday night in late June. She'd booked a private room at a steakhouse downtown. White tablecloths, low jazz, soft amber lighting. It was meant to be cheerful, a send-off into retirement life. Dylan arrived late but loud, wearing a blazer that still had the store tag tucked poorly. He hugged me, fake and fast, then spent most of the meal on his phone. When dessert came, he finally put it down. "So, Grandpa," he said, too casual, "thought any more about the house? You know, easier if we do it before, before I die." He didn't say it, but everyone heard it. Marlene's fork clinked against her plate. "Dylan!" "No, it's okay," I interrupted softly. I looked at my grandson, really looked. "You think you're ready for that house?" He grinned, relief flashing. "Totally. Gonna make it amazing. Big content hub. We'll make you proud." I sipped water, calm. "You know, when your grandmother and I bought that place, we didn't have much. We worked, saved, fixed it with our own hands. Pride comes from building, not waiting." He laughed uneasily. "Sure, but times change, Grandpa. Gotta move fast now." "Fast," I echoed. "Interesting." I didn't tell him the deed was already out of his reach. I didn't tell him about the scholarship fund or the airtight trust. Not yet, because this wasn't just about taking something from him. It was about teaching a lesson in the only language he seemed to respect. Public image. After dinner, I drove home under a pink sunset, hands steady on the worn steering wheel. The plan was clear now. The next time Dylan expected to celebrate me, he would instead meet truth, notarized, sealed, and undeniable. I spent the following week preparing. Karen helped draft a clear, concise statement explaining the trust and my choices. I compiled Dylan's posts and texts into a single printed packet, each page signed and dated by me, notarized for authenticity. I asked Karen to prepare certified letters for every family member, timed to arrive the morning after the dinner reveal. I also visited the veterans charity Sarah loved. The director, a kind man named Paul, shook my hand when I told him the house would one day be theirs. "We'll honor her name," he promised. It felt right. Sarah would have smiled. Every step was quiet. No threats. No angry calls. Just a man reclaiming dignity, one document at a time. Late one night, I sat on the porch with bourbon, cicadas buzzing loud in the dark. I stared at the swing Sarah loved, the house Dylan thought was his. I thought about legacy, about respect, about the thin line between kindness and foolishness. For years, I'd believed love would be enough to guide the next generation, but love without boundaries becomes a weakness to exploit. Dylan had crossed that line, and I had let him, until now. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth, about setting the record straight before I left this earth. I checked the leather portfolio one last time. Deed transfer, done. Pension beneficiaries, updated. Trust, sealed. Screenshots, printed, notarized. Certified letters, ready to mail the morning after the reveal. The storm was set. July heat lay heavy over Indianapolis the night of Marlene's family celebration. She told me it was just a small get-together. Kids, grandkids, a few close friends, to toast my new life after work. I knew better. Dylan had been bragging for weeks online about sealing the deal with the Brookside house. He'd posted a story with champagne glasses and the caption, "Big family business news coming soon." I arrived early, leather portfolio under my arm. The steakhouse's private room smelled of butter and charred meat. Edison bulbs glowed against dark wood. Waiters moved like shadows, setting wine glasses and linen. Marlene greeted me with a hug that lingered. "You okay, Dad?" she whispered. "Never better," I said. It was true. Calm had replaced humiliation. I was ready. Guests trickled in. Old coworkers slapped my back. Nieces and nephews hugged me. Dylan breezed in last, loud as ever, hair slicked, gold watch catching the light. He kissed Marlene's cheek, clapped me on the shoulder like a business partner. "Grandpa, ready for the big announcement?" "What announcement?" I asked, quiet. He winked. "You'll see." Dinner unfolded with forced cheer. Dylan dominated conversation, talking about venture capital and content studios. None of us believed he understood. My old plant buddies exchanged knowing looks but stayed polite. I let him talk, let him spin. When dessert plates cleared, Marlene tapped a glass. "Dad, before we wrap up, we wanted to honor you again." Dylan said he had something special to share. Dylan rose, grin wide. He held up his phone. "Family, friends, big news. My grandfather has decided to partner with me. Brookside's going to be the home of our new studio. Think TikTok meets entrepreneurship. We're flipping the old place into something huge. Investors are already lined up. Grandpa's belief in me makes it all possible." Applause was scattered, confused. I sat still, hands folded on the leather portfolio. "Harold," Marlene said gently, "do you want to say something?" I stood, slow, deliberate. The room quieted. Dylan's smile flickered. "I do," I said. My voice carried steady and calm, the way it used to when I trained new hires on the line. "Because tonight seems to be built on assumptions." A ripple of murmurs. I set the portfolio on the table, flipped it open. The scent of leather and paper rose like memory. "Dylan," I said, looking at him, "you've spent the last few months counting on my death for profit. You've texted friends about it. You've posted online. At my retirement party, you wrote and accidentally showed everyone that you can't wait till this old man croaks so you get the house." Color drained from his face. "Grandpa, that was—" I raised a hand, stopping him. "I don't need explanations. I need facts." I pulled the first document free, the notarized screenshot of his text from the party, stamped and dated. Gasped from around the table. Then the Instagram brag about flipping Brookside. Then messages he'd sent asking for loans, promising he'd repay once he sold my house. Each page landed with a quiet, devastating thud. You built an image of me as weak, easy. You assumed kindness meant foolishness. My gaze swept the table. You were wrong. I lifted the trust binder, heavy, official. As of last month, the Brookside house is no longer mine to give. It now belongs, irrevocably, to the Hoosier Trade School Foundation, providing scholarships to kids who want to learn real work. My pension beneficiaries have been updated. My savings will support your mother and a veterans charity your grandmother loved. Dylan, you are not included, and if you challenge this trust, you forfeit even the keepsakes set aside for you. Silence, utter ringing silence. Only the hum of the AC and the clink of ice in a water glass. "Additionally," I said, sliding a final envelope toward him, "you'll find certified copies of these decisions, delivered to you, your mother, and the county records office. They cannot be undone without my consent, which, to be clear, you do not have." Dylan's hands hovered over the envelope but didn't touch it. His face was pale, mouth open but no sound. "Grandpa, you can't just—" "I can, and I have." My voice stayed even, almost gentle. "I love you, but love doesn't mean rewarding greed. Someone, my nephew Jake, let out a low whistle. My coworkers nodded quietly, some smiling behind their napkins. Marlene's eyes were wet, but proud. Dylan tried a laugh that broke halfway. You're ruining my future. No, I said softly. You're discovering it. The waiter, sensing tension but trained to remain neutral, slipped out and closed the door behind him. The room felt suddenly intimate and heavy, like a courtroom. I turned to the rest of the table. I've worked 40+ years for what I have. I won't be mocked for it, and I won't let entitlement destroy what your grandmother and I built. Then I sat, calm, finished. For a long moment no one moved. Then Marlene started clapping, hesitant at first, then firm. Others joined, unsure but supportive. Someone said quietly, "Good for you." Dylan stood frozen, then shoved back his chair and stormed out, the door banging behind him. His Mustang screeched in the parking lot a minute later. No one followed. Marlene wiped a tear. "Dad, you didn't have to do it like that." "Yes," I said, watching the empty doorway. "I did." After dinner, I drove home through warm night air, windows down. The F-150's old bench seat creaked under me. Downtown lights blurred in the rear view. For the first time since that awful party, my chest felt light. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet paperwork, filed carefully and revealed when arrogance least expects it. Sometimes it's simply refusing to be used. I parked under the porch light, stepped out into cricket song. The house looked small and strong, just as Sarah and I built it. I touched the brick by the door, whispered to her memory. We kept it safe. Inside, I set the leather portfolio on the hall table. Tomorrow I'd mail the certified letters. Tonight, I allowed myself one deep, steady breath. The next morning, the sun poured gold across Brookside Avenue. My porch smelled of coffee and cut grass. A stack of certified mail sat on the kitchen table. One for Dylan, one for Marlene, one for county records, one for my lawyer. I slid them into the mailbox and raised the red flag. The sound of it locking upright felt like the closing of a long, painful chapter. By mid-afternoon, my phone began buzzing. First Marlene. She didn't sound angry, just sad. "Dad, he got the letter. He's furious. But I think deep down he knows." "I know," I said. "He needed to. He said you blindsided him." "I gave him a lifetime of help, Marlene. What he did at the party." I couldn't ignore it. Silence. Then a small sigh. "I'm proud of you, Dad. I'm sorry I didn't say more that night. You're my daughter. That's enough." After we hung up, more calls came. Some from cousins, old plant buddies who'd heard about the dinner. Most were supportive. A few warned me Dylan was venting online, calling me cold, selfish. I didn't look. I'd spent too many nights letting his posts hurt me. That part of my life was over. 2 days later, Dylan showed up. I heard the Mustang before I saw him. It sounded wrong, angry, sputtering, desperate. He parked crooked in my driveway and sat there a long time, staring at the house that would never be his. When he finally walked up the path, he didn't swagger. He looked young, small. I met him on the porch. "Grandpa," his voice cracked. "Can we talk?" I nodded and gestured to the swing. He sat, shoulders slumped. "I messed up," he said quietly. No bravado. "I've been stupid. I was angry after college didn't work out. Wanted an easy win. I told myself you'd bail me out like always. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry." I studied him. The boy I'd taught to fish was somewhere in there still, under the arrogance and fear. "Do you understand why I did what I did?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "Because I treated you like a bank, not family. And because respect has to be earned." For the first time in years, his eyes met mine without defiance, just shame and a flicker of wanting to do better. "I don't hate you," I said, "but I won't reward greed. If you want a future, you'll have to build it." He nodded, tears barely held back. "I will." I didn't offer money. I didn't undo the trust. Some lessons can't be softened. But as he left, quieter than he'd arrived, I felt something like hope. The first step is seeing the truth. Weeks passed. The online storm around Dylan died fast. The internet moves on. He found a job, warehouse work, humble but honest. Marlene told me he'd stopped bragging, started saving. Maybe it will stick, maybe not. But for the first time, change seemed possible. I spent those weeks enjoying the life I'd earned. Fishing at Eagle Creek, lunch with plant buddies who slapped my back and said, "About time you stood up for yourself." I smiled more easily, slept better. The humiliation from the party no longer haunted me. It had become fuel for something stronger, self-respect. One crisp August evening, I took the F-150 out for a long drive. Windows down, warm wind in my face. The city rolled past. The factory skyline, the Union Hall where my career ended, the quiet streets where Sarah and I once pushed strollers. I passed the house one more time before heading toward the highway. It glowed in the dusk, small but proud, now promised to help kids who want to work with their hands. It felt right. My legacy would be hard work, not handouts. At a red light, I thought of Dylan. Maybe someday he'll stand on his own feet, and we'll rebuild something stronger. But it will be built on respect, not entitlement. The light turned green. I eased onto the highway, the truck humming steady, free at last from silent resentment. Ahead stretched miles of open road, evening sky turning deep Indiana blue. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.